Welcome to a special edition of Stories with Brisco and Bradshaw. I am John Layfield, and better known as Bradshaw, and joined with my Hall of Fame partner from the WWE, Mr. Gerald Brisco, as always, and joined by one of the great musical geniuses, and I do think he's a genius, and a dear friend of mine, Joe Bruce, better known as Violent J of the Insane Clown Posse, and the biggest Bigfoot fanatic I know, so he had to be on this show, because we have got two guys I've been excited about since I heard they were coming on, Mr. Richard Freeman and Mr. John Downes. They have the Centre For Fortean Zoology that they have both run and take control of. Also, Richard Freeman, incredible expeditions all over the world searching for cryptid creatures. We're talking mainly about Bigfoot, but we'll talk about whatever these fine gentlemen want to talk about. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
I've just noticed that we're both titled as Jonathan Downes. I'm the Jonathan Downes. He's the imitation, but I can't work out how to change it on my iPad, so fuck it, let's go for it.
Well, it's a pleasure having you guys on there. It's always interesting to have people on that are experts in this subject that John and I find really fascinating. We've been fortunate enough to have some Loch Ness monster people on. We've been fortunate enough to have some UFO people on, and what a better way to round out our subject and to have Bigfoot, which is a very popular subject here in the United States. And we're on the road a lot, being entertainers. We travel the world. We travel all over and just about every continent you can imagine. Professional wrestling's on, and one of the three of us have been fortunate enough to visit just about every continent there is in the world. And there's something similar in all these continents. They all have some of the same folklore and everything. We call it folklore because really the evidence, is not really out there. But that's the reason we brought you guys on there to kind of bring full circle some of the stories that we've heard on the different continents there. I find it amazing, and John and I were talking about this earlier, that these things that we're kind of here in the United States, we're kind of just focused, well, this is all we hear. But then when you get the pleasure of traveling, you hear other stories in there, and you guys can bring all these stories together here. It's so unique how many different sightings there are worldwide in there. But I'm a guy that how did you get interested in this? And John, I'll start with you. How did you first this really pique your interest where you wanted to turn it into a career?
Well, I can tell you exactly, almost to the day. It was in April 1968. At the time, when I was a boy, I lived in Hong Kong, which was still a British colony then. And my father was one of the senior people in the Hong Kong government. And every Thursday, my mother used to go into town. She used to go and play tennis with her friends, have coffee, and then go to the library, and she'd bring back thrillers for my dad, picture books for my little brother, and animal books for me. And one day in April 1968, she brought back a book called Myth or Monster, and it totally blew me away. I learned that people believed there was an enormous lake monster in Loch Ness. I learned that people in North America believe they've got a giant upright walking apes. I learned about mystery cats. I learned about sea serpents. And I learned all this stuff. And it was one of the three great epiphanies in my life. The other two being when I first heard the Sex Pistols and when I realized that girls were different to boys. Those three
life-changing event there.
Those three life-changing epiphanies are basically what's driven my life evermore: sex, cryptozoology, and rock and roll. But I went to school the next day, and the teacher said to me, "Good morning, class. Now today we're going to talk about," and I was 8 years old, remember, "and we're going to talk about what do you want to be when you grow up. George, what do you want to be when you grow up?" "I'm going to be a soldier, Mum." "I'm going to be a soldier, Miss, just like my dad." "And Billy, what are you going to be when you grow up?" "Oh, I'm going to look down at me. "Mr. Downes, if you don't take this class seriously, you could jolly well go outside and not come back in again. And you're never going to amount to anything if you can't learn your 9 times table. Well, Mrs. Alexander, my dear, you're probably dead now. If you're not, you're going to be pushing 100. But I still don't know my 9 times table, and I am a monster hunter. So that's my story in a nutshell. Richard.
Well,
How do you top that, Richard?
I can answer the same question. How did I become a cryptozoologist in 3 words? Classic Doctor Who. Now, I grew up with Doctor Who in the 1970s. It started in 1960 and it was great in the 60s. It peaked in the 70s when it was more about Lovecraftian horror than it was about science fiction. So you had giant radioactive maggots crawling out of slag heaps in Wales, and intelligent humanoid dinosaurs rising up out of the sea, and these tentacled aliens projecting themselves mentally across space and entering anything made out of plastic, so dolls and shop room dummies could become killers. And it was terrifying. And I always have to have this caveat when I talk about Doctor Who. I'm talking about the real Doctor Who. I'm not talking about the woke bullshit that the BBC has been shitting out over the last 7 or 8 years.
Richard, hold back. Don't hold back. Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, we love it. We love it, Richard.
They turn him into a woman to tick some boxes, and then they turn him gay to tick some more boxes, and everybody switches off and it gets cancelled, and they wonder why. You go woke, you go broke. It's like a scatological version of King Midas. Everything touches turns to shit. Anyway,
I love it.
That's going to fuck our chances of getting on children's.
Oh man, thank you guys. Thank you guys for being relaxed and telling it like it is.
When I left school, I was a zookeeper, because my other great influence, other than Doctor Who, was David Attenborough and wildlife programs. And I always wanted to be a zookeeper, and I left school and I trained up and became a zookeeper at a place called Twycross Zoo. In the Midlands in England, and I looked after mainly crocodiles and alligators and snakes and lizards and stuff like that. And then after a brief stint as a grave digger, I was out looking for the beast of Bodmin Moor, one of the alien big cats, the mysterious big cats that live in Britain. They're not supposed to be here, but they are. They're panthers and pumas and so on that live in parts of Britain. And I stumbled on this place called Potter's Museum of Curiosities in Cornwall. And in the shop, this museum had like stuffed animals and weird curios and stuff like that. I suppose it'd be like one of those places that displayed sideshow gaffs in the States. It was a similar sort of setup to that.
Roadside attraction.
Yeah, but this was in like in a museum in Cornwall out on the moors. And in their shop, they had a little magazine called Animals and Men, which I picked up, and it wasn't as rude as it sounded. It was about cryptozoology, and it was edited by John. And I started writing letters to this magazine and writing articles. And John said, well, why don't you come down and live in Devon with us, because I was living up in Yorkshire at the time in the north of England, and be our zoological director. And so I did. I came down, joined the CFZ, and since then I've been all around the world hunting things like the Yeti, the Mongolian death worm, the giant anaconda, the orang pendek, the Tasmanian wolf, the Russian almasty, and loads more. I've had all kinds of weird adventures. I've been nearly swept away by rapids, almost fallen off cliffs, fallen down crevasses, been stalked by tigers, attacked by cobras, all sorts of. I'm off to hunt giant crocodiles in December.
Held up by the Russian secret police.
Oh yeah. We were held up by the authorities in Russia over our visas as well. But, all sorts of things have happened to us. Got covered in ticks, caught up in sandstorms and tornadoes, covered in leeches. Got all kinds of weird tropical diseases. But it's been worth it for the adventures.
So, and have you mentioned the Soviet police there? Have you guys ever got so close to something that you think you're discovering something, and the local officials come in and kind of shut you down, or do you find cooperative help, or how does that
Well,
go?
not exactly, but I've been over to Sumatra 6 times now, looking for something called the orang pendek, which is a upright walking ape that lives in the jungles of Sumatra. And they call it the name orang pendek means the short man because it's about 4 or 5 feet tall, but it's very broad and chunky. And we found hair from it, which has been analysed by a guy called Lars Thomas from Copenhagen University, who's an expert on mammal hair, and he says this is a new primate. It's related to the Sumatran orangutan, but it's not the Sumatran orangutan. We've seen it. We've seen its footprints, its handprints. One of the team members actually saw the creature in a tree.
Richard, you can even show them on
And,
Pendek.
and yeah, this is what the orang pendek is supposed to look like. Hang on.
Oh, wow.
That's a model of it, and it's probably the cryptid, apart from the Tasmanian wolf, it's probably the cryptid that's most closest to being accepted. I've heard it calling in the jungle. I've been 20 foot away from it when it was.
You've heard it calling?
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The noise it makes. Anyhow, they've cottoned onto it. The authorities in Sumatra have cottoned onto it, and how much Westerners are interested in it. So now they don't ban you from looking for it, but if you want to go into the national parks to look for this thing, especially if you've got cameras, they will charge you an absolute bomb. You have to have special permits, and they charge you loads of money. When in the past you just tell them at the office where you were going, and they'd just let you into the national park. So the last time we were over there, we had to do our research in the jungles that were not within the national parks. But that's the closest we've got to authorities trying to shut us down.
Richard, when you switch from zoology, you're a trained zoologist. When you switch to cryptozoology, did you get pushback from any of your colleagues from the traditional zoologists?
Not really, no. Sort of keyboard warriors online have sort of weighed in, and you can tell these kind of skeptics have never done any field work. They're the kind of people that wouldn't last 5 minutes in the jungle. 5 minutes into one of my expeditions, they'd be crying for mummy. These sort of people.
Was the famous footprint, 1951, that Shipton discovered it and took the photograph of next to the ice axe up in the Himalayas when he and Sir Edmund were first trying to summit Mount Everest. Was that kind of what set off the Yeti? Now, I know before that in the United States you had some Bigfoot sightings several decades before that, but was that kind of what set off some of the things toward the big Yeti type?
No. It was way before that. Way back in Victorian times, there were stories of explorers coming back saying that people had told them about this huge ape-like creature that lived in the forests. And in the 1920s, there were early explorers that had seen this thing as well. So that the Shipton photographs, which are most likely the footprints of a wolf or a bear that have melted in the snow and then refrozen. I mean, I think the Yeti exists. I've seen the tracks of the Yeti, and they're very similar to Sasquatch tracks. It's probably one in the same creature, one in the same species. I've seen them in the jungles of northern India, in the Garo Hills, and they're much more human-like than the Shipton prints, but way bigger than a human print. The Shipton prints are probably, I don't think they're a deliberate hoax, but I think they're a red herring.
Right. And Reinhold Messner, the first to climb all 14 8,000-meter peaks without oxygen, the world's greatest climber, has a place in the Dolomites there in Italy. He saw a Yeti, according to all reports. Has he done anything with you guys, or have any of these climbers that have seen stuff?
No, Reinhold Messner keeps changing his story. Originally, he said he encountered a Yeti, I think it was in Bhutan, and then he saw a female suckling a baby. And there's a terrible newspaper called the Daily Mail in Britain, and he had an article in that about all his sightings. And then he wrote a book saying that the Yeti is nothing more than a brown bear, which is absolute nonsense. shows he knows nothing about the anatomy of bears or the anatomy of primates. So he keeps changing his story. We've never done anything with Reinhold Messner, and I'd never want to, quite frankly. There are much better witnesses and more reliable witnesses than him.
Sure. And the one clip that people, especially in North America, love so much is the Gremlin Patterson clip of Bigfoot that everybody talks about so much. I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
Look behind me. That's one of the footprints from there.
Yeah. Wow.
Sorry to interrupt.
No. I was talking about the Gremlin Patterson video that was taken, I guess, in 1967, somewhere up in the Northwest. Have you guys? What are your thoughts about this? I mean, it's never been debunked, but it's never been proven either. So it's kind of in a gray area. It certainly appears.
To this day, it's still considered the best Bigfoot footage captured to this day. You know.
Well, I've worked with apes. I've worked with gorillas, chimpanzees, and orangutans when I was a zookeeper. And I can tell you right now that, to me, that doesn't look like a guy in a monkey suit. And there are several reasons for this. Every time people have tried to replicate it, it looks like a guy in a monkey suit. This doesn't look like a guy in a monkey suit. The main thing about apes and also relic hominins, the prehistoric relatives of man, they'll have a thick brow ridge, and then instead of having a upright forehead like we have, the forehead slopes off in an acute manner. So if you're going to have an ape mask with a sloping forehead, like the creature in the Patterson-Gimlin footage has, you wouldn't fit a human head in it because of the shape of our foreheads and our skulls. You would need an oversized head. So the sloping forehead would be above the actor's head. And you can see this in old films where they've got gorilla costumes. The head always looks too big for the body. But on the Patterson-Gimlin footage, it doesn't. Also, this is a female. It has pendulous breasts.
I was just going to say that. They didn't know this. They didn't know this at the beginning, right? Yeah. I mean, for years, they assumed it was a male. But now that we're able to stabilize it, you can see breasts. And this was never known all these years.
Big hairy tits. Now, if you look at apes in zoos, female apes don't have these large pendulous breasts like human females have. And one of the theories about them is that they counterbalance the large buttocks that human females have, because human females have to have very wide pelvic girdles for the birth canal, because human babies have very large heads in comparison to their body size, because we've got big brains. Now, these large buttocks are counterbalanced by large breasts on human women. But the known species of apes are knuckle walkers. They move around on all fours. This is an upright walking primate. So a hypothetical upright walking primate would need these large buttock muscles because we need them for upright walking. That's another thing about apes. If you look at the backside of a gorilla or a chimpanzee in a zoo, an orangutan, it doesn't have these big rounded buttocks. And that's because of the way our legs work. We need these gluteus maximus muscles to lift our legs for upright walking as well. So this hypothetical upright walking primate would have these buttock muscles for upright walking, and a female would have larger ones because of the birth canal. And she would also have pendulous breasts, unlike the known species of apes. Now, you're telling me that Gimlin and Patterson, a couple of old rodeo stars, had know all this about all this anatomy about apes and about fossil humanoids. I find that really hard to believe.
Joe, you act like you're wanted to get a question. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking about, I agree with everything he's saying. You know what I mean? I completely agree with everything Richard's saying because, I think that's still to this day the most convincing piece of footage, you know. But the problem, you made a lot of great points there. But the problem with a lot of the far away Sasquatch footage is the animal itself a lot of times looks like a man in a suit. You know, anytime you have something walking like a human, you're gonna instantly think it's a man in a suit. You know what I mean? But those are great, excellent points to the Patterson-Gimlin footage that absolutely. And also, they're able to stabilize it now. They're able to look in, and when it steps, you can see its thigh muscles ripping as it
Yeah,
steps. You know what I mean? You
absolutely.
can see its thighs flexing.
Hey,
And at the time, they got the guy that did the ape costumes for Planet of the Apes back in the 60s, and he said he couldn't make costumes that good. Disney Studios said they couldn't make costumes that good.
Richard, I've seen the comparison of the Planet of the Apes, the best costumes they had, and the Gremlin Patterson. There's no comparison.
So
No, nothing at all.
cowboys have got all this knowledge about anatomy, and they've got the best costume in the world.
Do
Suddenly,
you believe? Do you believe that some Sasquatch? Because there's a lot of accounts that sometimes when they run, they go down to all fours. Do you believe that to be true or no?
yeah, sometimes they go down on all fours as well. They say that about the Yeti as well. It walks mainly upright, but occasionally it will lope along on all fours.
So,
Presumably it'd be faster going on around on all fours than it would be.
The orang pendek as well. We've tracked it through the jungle. We've followed its footprints, and it's walking upright. And when it comes to a slope, it goes down on all fours and goes up the slope.
Would it be faster on all fours than upright, Richard?
I don't know.
To me, they would be.
I'm dying to know what your opinion is on the Todd Standing footage.
Oh, that's the guy who's filmed them close up, and you can see them blinking and things.
Yeah.
I think hasn't that been exposed as fakes using modified Wookiee masks?
Oh, they've been exposed?
Yeah, that's what I heard. And to me, they look like people in masks. They look too human.
Richard and John, how does this affect you guys? There's so many people. Ray Wallace was a famous faker back in the 50s and 60s that had big, footprints that he would go out. He loved, fooling people that they're seeing Bigfoot's footprint. But there's other things that you can't describe by science. And how does this affect you guys and your study? And the perception of that there are a lot of hoaxers out there that enjoy putting a doll, a little boat in Loch Ness and saying, oh, it's a Loch Ness monster, just to kind of have some fun with people and what they want to see.
Well, hoaxes seem to get the lion's share of news coverage. When there's a hoax, you must know as well as I do that tabloid newspapers are idiotic.
The real newspapers aren't much better.
The one there's one hoax, and they say, "Oh, that's it. That's because this photograph is a hoax, or this piece of film is a hoax. It means that creature doesn't exist." But that's like saying that if one Rembrandt picture is found to be a fake, there's no such thing as Rembrandt.
Right. There are so many cryptoids that have been discovered. The giant squid that people didn't think existed. The giant squid, the platypus, the okapi, the mountain gorilla, the colossanthus. So many different things have been discovered. Jeremy Wade, who I love to watch fish in River Monsters, the TV show, is always finding something that people weren't sure existed or didn't exist. Terrific fisherman. When you're discussing Bigfoot, there's a lot of different theories about it. And from what I've read about you guys, you don't believe in the theory that it could be something paranormal. It could be an interdimensional something. That is a lot of people do think. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's just an undiscovered human type primate animal? Or do you think it could be something that's in the paranormal?
I think there are two different discrete phenomena. I think there are large unknown primates around the world for sure. I mean, we've got environmental DNA was taken from a pool in Bhutan in 2018 on an expedition to look for the Yeti, and they found, when looking through the water, they found the cells of a Marco Polo sheep, which is a type of giant wild sheep that had never been recorded from that area before. But they also found the eDNA from a higher primate that was more closely related to human beings than chimpanzees. And that was examined by a French geneticist called Dr. Eva Bellarmine. And unfortunately, the samples have since been destroyed. We wanted to do more work on them, but they've been destroyed. But we've got hair from the Yeren, the Chinese Yeti, that's been examined by labs in China, Britain, and the US. and they can't identify it other than that it's primate, and it's got a very high zinc to iron ratio. But it's something completely unknown. So unknown primates do exist, but these paranormal things that seem to resemble Bigfoot that are seen during poltergeist outbreaks or UFO flaps, and they're linked with other phenomena, I think that's something different. And the analogy I always give is that in Britain, we've got legends of huge demonic black dogs with red eyes, these huge phantom dogs, like Black Shuck and the Bargest, and they've got various Padfoot is another one, and they're seen all over Britain. But that doesn't mean there's not real black dogs. You get both. So it's not a either or phenomenon. It's two discrete things. So I'm mainly interested in the flesh and blood creatures.
Right. Me too. I agree.
Too. Yeah. What
John,
do you think?
when I was a kid, I grew up reading the books. You know, back when people had libraries to go to, you didn't just find stuff on YouTube or whatever, TikTok. But I loved Bigfoot and I loved the Loch Ness monster. When I got old enough and I wrestled first in the UK, I went to Loch Ness. I went to Urquhart Castle. I took a boat all over Loch Ness. I did the whole thing. You know, it was like a childhood dream come true. It's so much fun. So many people have the same experience as me. They love this kind of stuff. Don't know if it's real or not. I hope it is. I don't know. But you founded the Centre For Fortean Zoology. Why don't you have like a building or something there in Devon or something to house all this stuff and for people to come and have a mecca for all this cryptid studies that are going on around the world?
We did 10 years ago, didn't we, Richard?
Yeah.
But because of lack of money, we had to close it down. And at the moment, I'm even having to sell the house we're in here now. And I'm moving back to a smaller house in Exeter. But I'm going to be looking for premises there that we can house our library and our collection of specimens, because we've got lots and lots and lots of stuff.
Yeah, now behind you, you have a mold of Bigfoot there. Where did tell us a little bit about that? Where did it come from, and how did you acquire that?
It's a really dull story. I bought it on eBay.
Oh wow!
But
so I can type it in. Wow!
It is a copy of one of the casts that was taken at Bluff Creek in 1967. One of the ones taken up by Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson after they took that film. Yeah. I've got other Bigfoot casts that have been given to me by researchers as well, but it's just that's the biggest one. I have that up on the shelf behind my head because it looks good when I'm doing podcasts.
Now, in your travels, how close have you come to actual discovering one of those?
Very close. There was one time when I was in Russia. This is before all the recent madness with that murdering freak Putin. We were looking for the Russian Almasty, which is a type of wild man seen across the former USSR, and it was taken so seriously in the Soviet era that they actually had a commission to look for it. And we were there with a couple of Ukrainian scientists, and we were staking out an old farmhouse that had been abandoned since the early 70s. But this creature, the Almasty, had been seen around it. And there were three of us there. And if you can imagine, this old farmhouse had 3 rooms with an L-shaped veranda running around it. And we put out bait, we put out meat and fruit and honey, and put out camera traps. And these creatures, the witnesses we spoke to many witnesses to the Almasty, including a doctor of geology who was the deputy head of Elbrus National Park, who'd seen one of these creatures. But the witnesses said they make a weird twittering noise like a bird. And at about 10 o'clock at night, one of these camera traps went off, and we heard this weird twittering noise, and then the camera trap went off, and I thought, bloody hell, is that the Almasty? We got it on film. But then nothing else happened for the next 4 or so hours. So it got to about 2 o'clock in the morning, and we went inside the building to warm ourselves around an old stove. And one of my friends fell asleep, and myself and this guy called Adam Davis were sitting in this room. The door was slightly ajar. There was a big door about 7 feet tall going into this room, and there was moonlight and starlight pouring through it. Then all of a sudden we hear this deep guttural vocalization from outside. It sort of goes bum 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 bum, and it sounds like something with a real barrel chest and big lungs. And I said to Adam, "Did you hear that?" And he goes, "Yeah." Then about 25 seconds later, something walks along the veranda. Whatever that something is, it's up on 2 feet. And when it passes the door, it blocks out the moonlight and the starlight to 7 foot plus. So there's something on 2 legs that was over 7 feet tall on the veranda. So we grab our cameras and go rushing in. Whatever it was had vanished into the darkness. And we did a circuit of the farm and the outbuildings, but we couldn't find it. And when we checked the camera traps in the morning, all we found was vegetation moving. Similar thing happened in Sumatra. The last time I was in Sumatra a couple of years ago, we heard the vocalization of the orang pendek from behind a stand of bamboo in the jungle. And our local guide, who's heard it many times, he says, "That's the orang pendek." And we heard it twice. And one of my colleagues ran around this stand of bamboo to try and frighten the creature back towards our cameras. I had my camera rolling and ready, but the thing ran off at an angle. Instead of coming round the stand of bamboo, it ran off at an angle into the jungle. So we missed it. If I'd have gone around myself with the camera rolling, I might have got it on film. But that's the closest I've been.
Wow.
What is your guys' Jonathan, Richard, what is your guys' opinion on the Sierra Sounds? Have you heard that in 19?
Yeah, I have. Now, I've seen a guy who's an expert on language looking at that and listening to it, and he says there's actual syntax in it. It's like a language. It's not just a random collection of noises. It's some sort of primitive language. Now, if this was a fake, would you have put that much detail into it to fool someone who's an expert in language?
Would you have the knowledge to put that much effort into it? No, I think it's very interesting. I agree with Richard. I think that to dismiss it would be a very stupid thing to do. I think it is.
I feel like the Sierra
it's not proof, but it's very positive corroborative evidence.
Hey, and Joe, real quick, for the people that are watching this that don't know what you're talking about, the Sierra Sounds, would you give just a brief explanation of what it is so people can look it up?
I believe it was 1976, I think. There was some, these guys were up in, I'm not sure where it was, but they were somewhere up on a mountain, and they had a location that was, it was great for what they were up there for. I believe it was hunting or something. I'm not sure. But it was a very secret location that there was nobody going up there. And they went up there and they had this experience. They built themselves a cabin and they had this experience where they heard all these vocalizations around them. You know, these things are communicating with each other, and they're surrounding them, and they're whooping, and they're having a language. It's a dialogue among them. You know, so they when they went back, they brung all this recording equipment with them, you know, standard for the time, what was top notch at the time. And they recorded, and it's now known as the Sierra Sounds. They recorded all this dialogue again. They were surrounded by these creatures, and these creatures were like communicating with each other. And it's fascinating. Like the dialogue is, and they had different scientists and experts review the footage, and they said, it's being spoken in tones that no human can replicate. No human can fake it. You know what I mean? It's being spoken in these tones that are higher at times and lower in bass tones that no human can do this. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they also somehow were able to figure out this thing must have stood over 7 feet tall that was making these vocalizations. And when you hear the sounds, the talking is fascinating, you know. And I also heard another piece of audio that was recorded by a man who lived at the edge of a forest, and he would put fruit out there time and time again, and whatever was taken, it would leave gifts in return. So he eventually set up some audio equipment to record what these things were doing. And for me personally, the recordings I heard of this were just as realistic sounding to me as the Sierra sounds. You know, I know that gorillas are in a constant state of flagellance, like they're constantly burping and farting and passing gas because of the vegetation they eat on a
Sounds like
constant,
wrestlers.
you know. And so this guy was recording these Sasquatch, and they're out there burping, and they're making these noises, and they're talking, and it just sounded too brilliant to be faked. You know what I mean? Like it sounded like nothing I would ever expect, but after hearing it and giving it thought, it was everything I'd ever expect. You know what I mean? When you put it all together, you know. So sometimes audio, but I do know this: the Sierra Sounds is right up there with the Patterson-Gimlin footage as considered one of the most solid pieces of evidence in the existence of Sasquatch, you know?
Yep. Hey, John or Richard, the idea of Bigfoot and the idea of Bigfoot existing means that there's a family of Bigfoot and obviously some type of structure of hierarchies and families and breeding systems. I've read that it's probably around 15,000 Bigfoots is what it would take to keep the population, at least in the America Northwest and the Canadian West, if the Bigfoot does indeed exist. Is that what you guys have studied and come to realize about how big are these families, like of different creatures? The one in Sumatra, the one in the Bigfoot. About how many do they have to be to continuously exist?
I would have thought 15,000 is very high, wouldn't you, Rich?
Yeah, there are animals that have come back from much, much lower populations.
The European bison, there's now, I think, 12,000 of them, both wild and in captivity, and they're all descended from 12 individuals.
The southern white rhinoceros was hunted almost to extinction, and now, paradoxically, it's the most common species of rhino. There's about something like 16,000 of them, and they're all descended from about 15 or 16 from a remote valley in Natal in South Africa. So animals can come back from very low populations. The Tasmanian devil, which is a flesh-eating marsupial, they were doing some genetic studies on it recently because it was having facial cancer, and these cancers could be transmitted like diseases when the animals fight and bite at each other. And they worked out that they only needed a base population of something like 25 of them to survive, and then they would be genetically fine. And that holds big significance for another one of the animals that I searched for, the Tasmanian wolf, which is a dog-like or wolf-like flesh-eating marsupial that has tiger-like stripes down its back and this stiff kangaroo-like tail. And it was thought to have been hunted into extinction in the mid-1930s, but there's been about 4,000 sightings since then, including a park ranger and a zoologist. And I've been over there 3 times now, and I think I've smelled its very distinct hyena-like odor. I've spoken to people that have seen it and heard its very distinctive call. I've spoken to people who are part of mass witnesses, like cars full of people have seen these things when they cross the road. And its continued existence has even been predicted by a computer program. A guy called Professor Henry Nix developed a computer program called BioClim, where you put into the computer program all the data you know about an animal and all the data you know about a geographic region, and it will match them up together and state where in this geographic region your target animal is most likely to be found. And he did this with the Tasmanian wolf, mainly just as an exercise. And the computer program, where it was predicting that the Tasmanian wolf should be on Tasmania if it wasn't extinct, if it was still around, there was something like a 98% match up with where people were actually reporting it from. So he became convinced that the Tasmanian wolf is still alive, and there may be as many as 1,000 of them in the wild of Tasmania.
But to go back to your original question, I think 15,000 Bigfoots is a gross overestimate, wouldn't you, Rich?
But I don't think you'd need that many to keep the population going.
I think we'd have a damn sight more evidence if there were 15,000.
I think
Yeah, now,
most,
let me ask you this. You know, we're talking numbers here. Most of the sightings seem to be focused on one individual, Bigfoot, or one sighting. Has there ever been any evidence of a family of Bigfoot being tracked or captured or anything like that? Not captured, but tracked and documented.
Didn't Jackie see two,
yeah,
Richard?
my friend Jackie Tonks was in Northern California going along a trail. She was in a four-wheel drive with several other people, and she saw two together. And she said that she thought they were both males, and she thought it was an older male and a younger male. And these things came out in front of the uh, vehicle, and there'd been like forest fires recently, so everywhere was very sort of ashy and burnt. And she said they stopped in the middle of the road and they dithered for a bit and they looked frightened, and she could see like the alarm on the faces at the car. And then they carried on and went down a great big slope. But there have been numerous sightings of families of Sasquatch together, but they don't seem to live in big troops like gorillas and chimpanzees. They live in troops of 40 plus, and I've never heard of a Sasquatch or Yeti sighting when there were so many of them together. Orangutans are solitary; they only come together to mate, so they might have a lifestyle socially more close to an orangutan than a gorilla, in terms that they don't live in these big groups.
And the prehistoric creature known from fossil evidence only, that's most likely to be the ancestor of the Yeti, at least, was related to an orangutan, wasn't it, Rich?
Yeah, Gigantopithecus. It's known only from its jaws and its teeth. It was a pongid, a member of the orangutan group. And if the rest of it was built on the same scale as its jaws and teeth, it would have been about 10 feet tall. But the thing about it is the wear patterns on its teeth suggest that it ate a very fibrous diet, like bamboo and roots and the pithy interior of other plants. Whereas the Yeti seems to be more omnivorous. It will eat fruit and vegetables, but it will kill animals as big as yaks by hurling rocks at their skulls or grabbing their horns and twisting their necks, and eat the flesh from the yak. And they're supposed to eat rodents as well. So they seem to be more omnivorous than the hominids of today. And the same goes for Sasquatch. It seems to eat a wide range of foodstuffs, both meat and vegetable. So another theory about the ancestor of the Sasquatch and the Yeti is that it might be one of the robust Australopithecines, Australopithecus robustus, or Picanthropus as it used to be called. And they lived alongside our own ancestors, Australopithecus afarensis, but they were bigger and chunkier, and they had more powerful jaws for biting into rough material, and they had more of a sagittal crest on the skull. So they could be the ancestor of the Yeti, but it's all just theory until we get a type specimen. We don't know.
Sure. And the 15,000 number, just so you know, is from a report I was reading about how Bigfoot is so hard to find. And they're talking about the millions of square miles. Their estimation was 15,000. If it's 5,000 or less, that even gives more credence to the article that you have millions of square miles. That's because they were saying how hard it'd be to find in millions of square miles. 15,000. If it's a smaller number, it gives more credence to that argument. I want to encourage everybody that's watching out there to go to your videos and your books. You guys, I've had so much fun. Look at all your videos and your books. They're just fantastic. It's the Centre For Fortean Zoology. Let me ask you about something from, say, a skeptic. A skeptic will say, we don't have DNA, we don't have bones. What do you say about that? Say specifically for any of the cryptids that you followed, but specifically maybe for Bigfoot.
Well, people say, how often do you find dead bears? Hunters say they virtually never find dead bears in the forest. Particularly forest environments, bones and flesh get gobbled up by scavengers really quickly, even faster in the tropics, in the jungle. And things like rodents and other porcupines will devour the bones to get at the calcium. So it's no wonder, if it's a rare creature, that we don't find the bones. This is running low. The battery's running low on this. Have you got a...
1 second. Technical issue. more technical.
And to that point, I love fried chicken. I go by Popeye's about 2 or 3 times a week. I get the bones and I leave them out for this big fat raccoon that lives near my house. When the raccoon comes, everything's gone. There's no bones. There's no anything. So when you talk about the forest devouring the remains of stuff, I can certainly see how that happens.
You guys
I
believe
would
in the
say,
theory?
sorry,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh,
I
I was
was
just
just
wondering if you guys
sorry.
believe in the theory that particularly in the United States, that the government has something to do with the fact that they remain um unreported. You know, like in other words, if say somebody hits one with a trucker hits one in the middle of the night or something, right? They call the police. The police end up calling somebody above them because they don't know what to do with it. And then the government comes and says that you hit a bear. You know, that wasn't a bear. Yes, it was. That was a bear you hit. You know, my theory on that is if they were to say, this is here, this is real, we found a body of a dead Sasquatch, and all the news were to report on it and they were to acknowledge it, it feels like every big game hunter from around the world would suddenly descend on the United States looking to capture a Bigfoot head on a plaque. You know what I mean? And they
I
would be
know
whatever.
exactly what you mean, but I think it's more subtle than that as well. Governments don't like having to do anything, and governments work on a. Sorry, I'm just sorting out the battery for Richard. Governments work on the principle of if you have to do something, they'd rather not. They work on the principle of creative inertia. And can you imagine the level of administrative horseshit that would you find a real live or a real dead Sasquatch? Can you imagine all the stuff that the government, both at a federal and a local level, will have to do? They'd have to make it protected species. If it's closely related to us, is it covered by the political, by the parts of the Constitution about protecting the rights of people? If it is a type of people, not a type of animal, is it? Then can you imagine the churches will all have to decide: does it have a soul? Should they have
Exactly.
to send what are they called, missionaries out to it? And that's only beginning. Can you imagine that what happens when you've got troops of Boy Scouts going out camping in the woods and there is a potentially dangerous tribe of 7-foot hairy creatures there? Can you imagine the problems they'll have with insurance and everything else? So I think the government knows perfectly well that they are there and is quite happy for people for it not to be proven
Thank
because
you. I'm so
they'd
glad you
have
said
to
that.
do something about it.
That's what I feel. I feel like it's just easier to let them remain a myth, you know? It's easier
Exactly.
on every level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Richard, I'm sorry.
Tasmania, there are rumours in Tasmania that the government know that the Tasmanian wolf is there, and they're not saying anything because it'll interfere with logging interests.
But I've also heard a rumour that the government know perfectly well that the Tasmanian wolf is there, but they haven't got the money to pay for all the extra park rangers to protect it. And so they're ignoring it, pretending it doesn't, giving it time to get its numbers up again.
Wait a minute. Are you saying the government might cover something up?
No.
Also,
Stop it. Stop
Governments are
it.
wonderful
Next
people.
year, you're going to tell me the governments are corrupt.
And John, isn't
No.
it great to hear somebody in a different country say the same thing that we're saying over here over and over again?
That's
So,
right.
so our mindset's not too far off. Guys, we're taking a lot of your time. I'd like to. You guys have done some fantastic exhibitions all over the world. What is the most strange thing that you witnessed yourself in your searches for these exotic creatures? Jonathan, let's start with you. What's the most unique thing you've ever seen?
About 27 years ago, I was in Mexico, right in the middle of the Puebla Desert, in a little village called Taloxacan, which has now been flattened, was flattened in the big Puebla earthquake about 20 years ago. And I was there. It was very hot, even though it was very early in the year, it was very hot. And I was wondering why all the houses had their windows nailed shut, why there were bulbs of garlic nailed to the frames of the windows, and why there were huge crosses painted on every wall. And my Spanish is rubbish, but I can talk a little bit of Spanish, and I know perfectly well that when I asked the mayor of the village, why is this happening? What is this for? And he said, Señor, por protección de vampiros. And I thought, fuck, these people are seriously frightened that they are going to be eaten alive by vampires.
Wow.
And then that was probably the freakiest thing that's ever happened to me. Being in a village and you suddenly realize this isn't a game anymore. These people seriously believe that they're in danger of being killed by vampires.
Wow.
Wow.
And Richard, you've already mentioned some of the great expeditions you've been on. You got some great videos. I encourage everybody out there to check these out on CFZ, Center for Fortean Zoology. But I want to ask you this because I'm enamored with this. Is there a giant anaconda?
Yes, yeah, yeah. I've been to South
And
America.
how big are they?
They probably reach around 50, maybe 60 feet.
Wow.
But these are outliers. These are freaks of nature.
Now, is this a separate species of anaconda, or is it just something that just
No,
we have
think
some
it's-
7
we
foot
think
tall
that
people?
Big females in undiscovered areas, in undisturbed areas that have a good food source and put all their energy into growing.
And they'd be
And
old as well, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they can reach fantastic sizes. The same with pythons in Africa. There was a python film photographed in 1959 in Katanga in the Congo, and this thing that the fighter pilot in the helicopter, well, he was a charter pilot then, but he was a fighter pilot in World War II. He estimated it to be 50 feet long. And recently they found the area on Google Earth. They matched it up with the rock formations. And this guy said he was 40 meters up. And this thing was 50 feet long. And they worked out that he was correct. Looking at all of the physical features in this shot, rocks and stuff, if he was 40 meters up, this snake would have been 50 feet long.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. I saw at one time the biggest crocodile in the world down in I think it was Joburg where they had it. Unbelievable, 24 feet. This stuff looks prehistoric. You realize there are crazy
They get
things
bigger
out
than
there.
that.
You've seen a bigger one than
Yeah.
that, haven't you?
There are the biggest crocodile ever. There were two, a Nile crocodile and a saltwater crocodile, measured at 28 feet by experts, and there are eyewitness reports of much bigger ones. So you've got to remember, unlike pythons and anacondas, which might be longer, these things are heavier because they're chunky.
Right.
So we're talking a 30-foot croc is going to be at least 3 tons. There's one recently filmed in Batam in India. And the film of it, if you look online, put giant crocodile Batam, and it looks at first, you think you're looking at a small island or a sandbank until it moves, and this thing is colossal, absolutely huge. But if you to ask me, the weirdest thing I've ever been involved with is an ongoing investigation that I'm doing now, where I've been interviewing a number of people from a mass witness sighting, all perfectly sane, that have claimed to have seen dragons, literal dragons. Now, we think of dragons as completely fictitious, just creatures from ancient folklore and myth. But around the world, there's been many, many modern day sightings of dragons. The late, great Linda Godfrey covers one from Wisconsin in her book American Monsters from 2007, mass witness reports of a dragon. There's been others from Iceland, South Africa, right across Asia. And you've got to remember, dragon legends go back 75,000 years. They're the most ancient of all monster archetypes. And I've been investigating modern day sightings in England, in Surrey, around the ruins of an abbey, of people seeing dragons. And they were out ghost hunting. They weren't thinking about dragons, they were looking for ghosts.
And this was last year.
This 2023. And they saw these huge creatures with massive bat-like wings, huge wingspans. And I talked to them, and some of them were really genuinely terrified by what they saw. They thought that these things could swoop down and devour them instantly. One woman thought that it was something demonic, and I had to explain to her, dragons are much more ancient than demons, much, much more ancient. But we're not for 1 minute suggesting there's an undiscovered species of winged lizard the size of a whale that's existing in England, undiscovered. These are, as I was talking of earlier, these are paranormal manifestations. They're supernatural. They're not flesh and blood animals. So they're like modern day sightings of werewolves and things like that. Modern day sightings of fairies. There's something paranormal. They're not flesh and blood in the way that something like the Mongolian death worm or the Tasmanian wolf or the Yeti are flesh and blood animals. There's something paranormal. But dragon legends are international. They're found in every country on Earth, going back. The earliest ones are from South Africa, from 75,000 years ago. So it's no wonder that people occasionally still see them, because they're such an ancient and powerful archetype.
Yep. And to be fair, I want to point out the crocodile I saw was the largest in captivity at 24 feet. The
largest in captivity.
Largest in captivity. They named it Arnold for Arnold Schwarzenegger. It was just, it looked like a dinosaur.
That's still a hell of a size. An average size croc, 15 feet long, would take down a lion or a tiger or a water buffalo, and they even kill sharks. The bite of a big crocodile is something like 3 times the power of a great white shark. And they kill more people than any other large predator in the world. Only little things like mosquitoes and tsetse flies kill more people. And of course, humans themselves.
How big was the one that you went in its cage with in Thailand, Rich?
That was 20 feet. Yeah.
20 feet. Wow. I live in Florida, and we're always fascinated by the big alligators we have down here in Florida, and some of them measure 20 foot plus. But we have an invasion of pythons down in Florida, and if they're captured, they have python seasons. The guys go out there, capture 20-foot long pythons. But we've seen videos surface where these big alligators, big Florida alligators, the pythons are swallowing these huge alligators down in the Everglades down there. It's amazing what the wildlife can do to each other.
Hey,
it's about the only thing in Florida that will control the invasive pythons are large alligators, because big alligators will eat pythons. Like, they never meet them in the wild, but crocodiles eat pythons in the wild in Asia and Africa, and big American alligators will eat these Burmese pythons. The pythons will take small alligators, but the big ones will keep the pythons under control. But you'll never be rid of them now.
That's the thing. They're trying to capture them, and the population keeps going up, no matter how many.
You'll never get rid of them now. They'll be there forever. You might be able to control the population, but you'll never totally get rid of it.
And the scary thing about it to most people is they're moving north too, so they're getting acclimated to the weather down here.
Yeah, well, with global warming, they will move north. A bit like the Africanized killer bees are moving north because of the climate change.
Right.
Well, Richard, how long will it take if the movement of these species is going north before they get to Washington and attack the politicians?
Not quick enough.
Can we send them a bus ticket?
Yeah, not quick enough.
Yeah, I'd like to see our politicians torn apart violently by dragons and other monsters.
Hey, Joe, before we go, you guys have been so good with your time. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Joe, you're our special guest on here. Did you have any final question or something that you wanted from these great explorers and legends?
I'm just amazed and blown away, and I can't wait to go look at this footage you're talking about. You know what I mean? I'm honored to be here with you guys. I saw something when I was 17 that I wrote about in my book that I came out with probably 20 years later. And I'm describing what is a Bigfoot. and nowhere in the book does it say Bigfoot, though, you know. And when I look back on it now, I realize I'm describing a Bigfoot, you know what I mean? But I don't believe there's any Bigfoots in Metro Detroit, you know what I mean? In the suburbs of Detroit. So I don't really know what to think of it. But ever since then, ever since seeing what I saw, I realized, because I don't think I'm insane. I mean, I do got clown paint on, but I have never seen anything after that what I saw, you know what I mean?
And you did name your rock and roll group, rap group, Insane Clown Posse.
That's right. But I've never seen anything like that again. So it's not like I have a track record of seeing crazy things, you know what I mean? I only saw something like that once in my life. But I do believe that there are things on this planet that cannot be explained. You know what I mean? I mean, they can be and eventually will be, but right now we can expect the unexpected. You know what I mean?
Well, once upon a time, giant squid, gorillas, meteorites, lightning, nobody could explain them. They thought they were nonsense.
I don't think I hate the word paranormal, because I think all this stuff is perfectly normal. It's just controlled by laws of science we don't understand yet.
That's a great take.
That's right.
Hey, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. It is such a
thank you.
I growing up a huge Bigfoot and Loch Ness fan, talking to you guys is like talking to your great sporting legends like a Babe Ruth or a Joe Louis or a Muhammad Ali or something. It's so fun talking to you. Richard, I envy you so much going on these great expeditions.
Oh, thanks. They are hard work. They can be grueling, but it's great adventure. You said earlier that you wrestled in England at once.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever meet Big Daddy?
Yes, I did. I met Big Daddy, and I knew his nephew, Crabtree was his real name, Shirley Crabtree.
Crabtree. Easy.
That's right. And Earl Crabtree, who played for Huddersfield's Rugby, I knew pretty well.
Yeah.
Or know pretty well.
Yeah. I remember him fighting giant haystacks back in the 70s and 80s.
You always say I look like giant haystack.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I've wrestled over there a lot. Wrestled all over the England, UK, all over there.
Oh, fantastic.
Jonathan, I saw where you were described as the old hippie, and I wondered why. No.
Well, I'm an old hippie, for Christ's sake. Look,
hey, I'm an older hippie, so I understand.
If you guys are interested in this stuff, give me a shout after the show, and I'll put you on my mailing list so you can hear all about expeditions as they happen and what's happening, what's going to happen, and even if you've got expeditions coming up that you guys might like to be involved with. It's lovely.
Love to be involved.
Well, what an invitation! Thank you. Yeah. Don't be surprised if one of us or all three of us take you up on that.
And if you guys need anything promoted or anything, guys, we're more than happy to use whatever platform we have to promote you guys' stuff. Love what you guys do.
Well, we're always looking for backers for expeditions, because the one thing that stymies us is lack of cash. I mean, you really need to go out to look for these things for months on end, and we can afford to do it for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. When they first went out to try and film the snow leopard, for example, in the Himalayas, it took them 7 years to find it and film it. And that's an animal we know exists. So if you're talking about something like the Yeti, an intelligent primate that doesn't want to be found, it's going to take a hell of a long time. And the skeptics say, oh, you go on these expeditions, you don't find anything, you can never film the creature. Well, we're over there for like 2 weeks. What do you expect? Like even the BBC, when they were trying to film birds of paradise in New Guinea, that the guys trying to film birds of paradise were there for months before they got them. So, if anybody who's interested in sponsoring expeditions, we'd be well up for that. And, we'd wear their corporate logos on our T-shirts or whatever. But yeah, it's all down to the green folding stuff at the end of the day. If we were all multimillionaires, none of this would be mysteries, because we'd have found them all.
And like they say, every man has his price. And
Never
Richard's
been
and my
on that.
price is nowhere near as high as you might think.
That's right. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time today. Love talking to you guys. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you very much
Thank you.
indeed.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you to all you guys for letting me sit in.